Hi guys, today's video is going to be a special edition, a very different one, because today living in Canada is going to Indonesia, Jakarta. And by the way, this video is going to be heavily skewed towards culinary experiences, so don't be expecting any monuments or museum visits in this one. Jakarta is the capital of roughly 20 plus million people of Indonesia, nearly 280 million people, a packed, bustling, and growing city. We recently visited my husband's hometown and the city I lived in for about 1 decade of my life. And I must say that I have sort of a love and hate relationship with this city. This video here is a mixed bag of my 2 weeks vacation in Jakarta. So just in case you've been thinking about visiting Jakarta, this video will hopefully give you an idea of what this exciting and complicated city is like. And especially how much things cost, especially compared to Canada. Touching down shortly with Turkish Airlines in Jakarta. Can't see very clear here because the city is engulfed in smog, and Jakarta is one most polluted city after all. This is the Soekarno-Hatta Airport, also known as Cengkareng Airport, and over there's Garuda Indonesia, the national airline, a 5-star airline by the way. Now we're taxiing to Terminal 3, the newest and largest terminal of all 3, which is mostly used for international airlines and some domestic airlines. And there we are, coming out of the aircraft. I could immediately feel the warm and humid air. So there on the right is a counter for visa on arrival, and then everyone goes here through immigration. They now have these automatic checkout lines, so now it goes super fast. Jokowi, the previous president's government, has done a really great job in speeding up the whole immigration process. So I really hope that they will keep things this way after the election, as now a new president has been voted into office. Then it's pretty much the usual. Baggage claim over here. And by the way, a decade or so ago, there used to be so many unofficial porters, baggage handlers who would just compete to get you to use their service. Then you'll need to fill out a custom form online. And yes, there is airport Wi-Fi, and you can also get an eSIM card on your way out here. Exit through here. If someone's picking you up, this will be the meeting point usually. And right after you get out, there are some money changers. And if you're taking a taxi like we did, I'd recommend taking a Bluebird taxi, especially if it's your first time. There's Golden Bird, Silver Bird, and Bluebird electric car. They are all from the same company. The electric cars have a higher rate though, so watch out for that. Silverbird, the one we took, is a great choice. They have nice cars, great drivers, very polite drivers in general, and the rates also make sense. So we're on our way now, and the meter started at 17,000 rupiah, or equivalent to about 1.5 Canadian dollars, and that's now in 2024, by the way. It's always better to have cash with you because the taxis do not always have a payment machine in their cars. And by the way, when you take a taxi, always make sure that the doors are locked. It was around 6-7 p.m. and traffic was kind of okay. But I guess it was only because the next day was a holiday, Chinese New Year, and this is what streets usually look like during daytime. The biggest shock for me again was the humidity. Although I experienced all of that years ago, but each time I come back to Indonesia, it really takes some time to adjust to the whole thing again. So if you want to go from anywhere in Jakarta to the city center, be prepared for at least 1 hour, if not 1.5 hours. So it was Chinese New Year's Eve, and usually the custom is to eat at home. But nowadays, people are more flexible, so this year we gathered with my husband's family at this Chinese restaurant called Central in West Jakarta. And by the way, in Indonesia, there are a lot of different ethnic groups, and among those are Chinese Indonesians. So these tables are all occupied by different families, and we have an 8 or 9 course menu tonight, while having this very stereotypical Chinese New Year music entertainment blasting out of the loudspeakers around us. And the next morning for breakfast or brunch, I got to enjoy what's called this nasi tumpang. Nasi is rice, so it is a rice dish, usually eaten during celebrations, consisting of yellow rice, made out of rice, coconut milk, turmeric, and lots of different side dishes. Here's some fried chicken, egg, tempeh, squid, corn fritters. These are really delicious, and especially the sambal or the chili sauce, you just can't go without that. Like for many Chinese Indonesians, it's open house on Chinese New Year, so relatives come over, they go from one home to the other to say Happy Chinese New Year. Usually the younger people would come to the older relative's house. Now, the streets in Indonesia can be quite a culture shock for foreigners. There are a lot of tiny side streets which are known as Jalan Tikus, which means mouse road. So those are actually really helpful because they help you cut through the more jammed streets, but you often barely have an inch on your right and left. And yes, this is a two-way street. And then there are tons of motorcycles. Back then, I drove a stick manually through these streets, and every time I'm not behind the wheel, I just wonder how I managed to get through this. Jakarta is a city of extremes. There's poverty, extreme poverty on one side, and extreme luxury on the other, as in many other Asian cities. Over here is Pondok Indah Mall, which is one of the most popular malls in South Jakarta. My uncle and his wife have a popular restaurant here that sells street food. So we got a bunch of food to share again so we could try everything. This is siomai, and many people know it comes in different variations, and this one is mie tek tek. It's a noodle dish in beef broth. Gado-gado, I'm not sure if you heard of it. It's a vegetarian salad-like dish with a very yummy peanut sauce. This is very suitable for vegans. And then mie ayam, or chicken noodles, and pempek. This is a specialty from the island of Sumatra. Easiest described as a fish cake-like dish, but very different. I think it tastes much better with a vinegar, spicy, sweet tasting sauce. And all of this food probably cost around 20 Canadian dollars. So this is one of the things I really enjoy about eating in Indonesia or in Asia in general. Usually people will come together in a big family and they will order a bunch of food, put it in the middle, and just share everything. By the way, guys, every time I travel, I make it a point to travel really light because I find that way I'm just much more flexible, but I still want to make sure that I always have all the stuff that I need with me. So during my trip to Jakarta, I actually brought these little containers here to put my shampoo, body wash, conditioner, face wash, etc. in these. They're really great. They're squeezable, and surprisingly, they didn't leak at all. And I got these on Amazon, so just in case you're looking for something like that, you can go to the descriptions and check these out, as well as all my other great finds on Amazon. This area here is called Pik, or Pantai Indah Kapuk. This is an affluent mega residential area in the north of Jakarta. It's mostly artificial land built on water, and it's scorching hot here. There are hundreds of restaurants in Pik, and this is just one of perhaps 20 or 30 more rows, so hundreds of restaurants. Today we went to a dim sum place. Since Indonesia is a majority Muslim population, keep in mind that many or most restaurants don't have pork, but since here we're in an area with a large population of Chinese Indonesians who are mostly non-Muslim, you will find pork dishes everywhere. Our small lunch for 6 people here cost us around $60, which in a low-income country like Indonesia is rather on the expensive side. And by the way, if you're wondering about how much to tip here, tips in Indonesia are actually voluntary. It's not like in North America where by default you're expected to give a tip of minimum 15%. But of course, tips are always appreciated. I mean, if you go especially to an expensive restaurant and you spend like $60 or $100 and you do not leave anything, that will likely still be frowned upon, but there's no fixed percentage. From experience, if a family would dine and spend about $50, it is very rare that they would even leave $5. Maybe they would leave $2 or $3, and that would already be very good. This place here is called Orange Grove, and a lot of places use Western names because that makes everything just sound more cool and hip and sellable to the local population. It's a brand new small complex with very high-end restaurants and cafes, one of the many establishments in Jakarta patroned by the top 1% or even 0.1% of Jakarta's residents, I dare to say. The majority of the population with a minimum wage of about $300-400 US per month simply can't afford this. Many places, although not all, of course, are definitely overpriced, overhyped, but under-deliver. On Sundays like today, you'll get ahead very fast on the toll road, but on weekdays, especially rush hours, it's crawling, and on some stretches, it can take you an extra hour to get somewhere. So if you ever thought that traffic in Toronto or on the Gardiner Express is bad, then wait until you get to a city like Jakarta. When we went back, frequently relatives were driving us, but if you're visiting, you can get around very easily using taxis, and I highly recommend using Gojek, which is a local drive-sharing service. It's like Uber or Lyft. There's also Grab. They're very popular and especially very affordable. But yes, Jakarta now has an MRT and it's actually quite good, but it is quite convenient and it is really cheap. One trip on average will cost you about $1. So far, the MRT coverage in Jakarta is still limited, but yes, they are expanding it. So right now you can get from north to south, south to north to the city center. But from there, if you want to branch out, go somewhere else, then you would likely need to connect by taxi or by Gojek. Jakarta, unfortunately, does not have nice pavements and the air quality is awful. That's just a fact. That's why coming back to Canada, I really appreciated the relatively fresh air and also that it's just so easy to just walk everywhere, take the subway or the bus without sweating all the time. Now, this area here is called Puri or Puri Indah. This is also a very affluent area in West Jakarta and also a foodie paradise for many people. You might have noticed a pattern here. There are tons of malls here. And that's what people do most in their free time, actually. Mall hopping, savoring the AC and the clean environment. Most people obviously don't hang out at malls and cafes all the time. This is just because we were on vacation. But you would perhaps in Jakarta as a tourist just to stay out of the heat. Breakfast again the next day. And in case you're wondering what Indonesians eat for breakfast, usually Indonesians would eat a warm meal. So even rice with some side dishes. Over here we have some fried tofu and tempeh, eggs, vegetable, and even some fruit. And if you're more used to a Western style kind of breakfast or dining, usually in a family, everyone would sit together at the table and then eat at the same time. Indonesians, yes, they sometimes do that if they can, but more often what you would find in a household is that someone in the family, that could be the mom or one of the servants or cook, they would prepare the food in the morning as early as 5, 6, or 7 a.m. and then just place it on the table. And then any of the family members would just go and sit at the table and have their breakfast according to when they have time. So it is not always a must that everyone sits together at the breakfast table. When you do go to the table and there's someone else eating or someone is just passing by or sitting and not eating, then you would say to them that you are going to start to eat as a matter of politeness, and especially if that's an older person. So you wouldn't just go and eat, but you would say to that person, makan dulu ya. Makan dulu means I will eat first. So the emphasis is not on first as in you will eat first before them, but I am going to eat, okay? It's just a polite way of acknowledging that the other person is there and you're not just ignoring them and eating. Now we're out on the road again, this time to central Jakarta, the Bundaran HI or Hotel Indonesia roundabout. A very nice and expensive and iconic area. Still, you will see a lot of street vendors here on bikes, stinky garbage trucks passing by high-end salons. Here we have a mid-class cheap restaurant specializing in noodles. Mie ayam is noodles served with chicken and some bok choy, here with mushrooms too, and a little soup. I got some extra fried wontons, and everything tastes double as great with the hot sauces. I spent around $3.50 for my noodles and drink. But if you go to the carts like this one over here, you'll probably only pay about $1. A quick trip to a friend's workplace, a biscuit company, a very famous one called Kongguan. This is where you'll get the masses' favorite biscuits for just 40 cents or so. Now, is Jakarta expensive? Not if you eat inexpensive street food. Indonesian food in general is very affordable to cheap, but coffee at popular and westernized cafes like this one usually will cost you $2.50 to $3.50, and that's what many Indonesians earn in a whole day. Getting a massage is also very cheap, even in Jakarta. I highly recommend this chain, by the way, Tang. A 75-minute reflexology session costs about $11, and this is in an expensive area. And there are many cheaper ones, but I wouldn't necessarily go for those if you can afford this. And this is just so relaxing, especially after the long flight. It was almost 30 hours with the transit. Now, today we're in South Jakarta again, eating fried duck, which is absolutely delicious. This is a very popular place. Duck breast or thigh with rice, sambal. Sambal is always a must in Indonesian meals, and a soup called sayur asam or sour soup with vegetables, including jackfruit. And for 4 people, we spent around $26. For dinner, we hopped over to Harum Manis. That's another popular but rather pricey restaurant. Fried chicken and a dish called ketoprak made of noodles, tofu, soybean sprouts, and a peanut sauce with kerupuk or prawn crackers. This is local traditional Indonesian food, but served in a much more fancy style and expensive place, so it costs us roughly $35 to $40. If you got the same food from a street vendor, it would probably only cost you $10, but of course you wouldn't get the same kind of atmosphere. And this is a passion fruit drink with coconut meat. Breakfast again now, a lot of food today. This is lontong sayur, one of my favorite dishes. It's a bit like a curry, but it's on the thinner side. It's probably closer to what's called a laksa. Lontong is a sort of rice cake with a spicy coconut soup, beans, egg, tofu, and labu siam. Labu siam is, I think it's called chayote, or also known as Siamese gourd. And this round oval-shaped green beans here is called pete. Some call it stinky beans because it really smells, but I like it. So some people love it, some people hate it. You just gotta try it out for yourself. So this fruit here is called rambutan. It's a complex tasting fruit, sweet and sour, but juicy, perhaps closest in comparison to lychee, but still a bit different. A bit challenging to eat if you're not used to it, as the flesh wraps tightly around the seed, but it is so delicious and fun to eat. Later on, we had seafood at this popular restaurant chain called Sentosa. The best restaurants in Jakarta look nothing like fine dining. You go there to eat. Yes, you chat with your family and friends, but that is not the main point. The main point is just to gather with family and enjoy the food together. And man, did I enjoy it. We got crab with 2 kinds of sauces, pepper sauce and saus padang, which is a spicy sweet tasting sauce. Steamed shrimp. Kangkung is a very popular and cheap green vegetable that is always on the menu everywhere. Deep fried shrimp, the crab with padang sauce, the sweet and spicy sauce. And you'd normally have several kinds of chili sauces on the table, but be careful if you're not used to eating chili sauce and some of these are really very spicy, you can end up with a stomach ache, so go easy on those. This is the crab with a pepper sauce, which is my favorite. In Indonesia, it's custom to eat food with your hands, not just for seafood, and also not all kinds of foods, but there are many kinds of dishes where it's really okay to just use your hands. So a meal like this for 8 people would cost somewhere between $150 to $200, depending on what you order, obviously, because crab, for example, is more expensive. But compared to what it would cost in Canada, it is relatively cheap. In the late afternoon, we went to Mass. It was Ash Wednesday. So Indonesia is a Muslim majority country, if Wikipedia is right. About 87% of Indonesians identify as Muslims. Then there are 10.5% Christians, 1.7% Hindus, and 0.7% Buddhists. And in general, the tolerance between the groups is not bad. So on to the next mall. Gandaria City is one of the very popular malls in South Jakarta. Only middle and upper class people would come here, so you would sometimes but rarely see people doing service work hang out here because it is simply unaffordable to them. So talking about inequality, Canada is really nothing compared to Indonesia or some other Southeast Asian countries. Here at one of my favorite Indonesian restaurants, Sate Senayan, they have a large range of authentic Indonesian dishes. So if you just arrived in Jakarta, it's a good idea. The preparation of the food is rather clean and the food is not too spicy. Although if you have a problem with spicy food, then it's always a good idea to tell them to tone down the spiciness or just don't use any chili at all. This dish here is called lontong cap gome, a dish with a kind of rice cake, coconut soup, some tofu and vegetables, egg and satay. Very delicious. And there are always some crab chips or crackers on the restaurant table, but they're not free. So usually you just eat what you want, and then when you get the bill, you will tell the waiter what exactly you ate. Now, when I go back to Jakarta, I always go to the hair salon because it's just much cheaper. Usually for a thorough hair wash or hair spa. I got so used to cutting my own hair, so this time I didn't think about cutting my hair there. I just got a nice hair wash with a little massage. The Canadian dollar to the Indonesian rupiah is about 11,500. So to make it easy, just roughly divide everything by 10. So a haircut with an Indonesian stylist, for example, would be almost $30. But remember, this is a Korean salon at a very luxurious high-end mall. Elsewhere, you could probably get a haircut for as cheap as $8. And for guys, if you get a haircut at a street vendor, like a pop-up barber kind of thing, then it might only cost you $3 or $5. Yes. But of course, there's no washing of the hair and no sterilizing of equipment, etc. And a quick stop to the batik shop. This shop sells beautiful batik clothes for men and women, also accessories like shawls, so we got some gifts here for coworkers. Nothing too fancy for myself because I just spent too much money on this trip. And by the way, on the way back to Canada, we would stop by in Istanbul for 1 week and it was awesome, but that's a video for another time. A batik dress like the red one here could cost around $100 plus. Yes, high quality batik is not cheap. Of course, you can get cheaper items at the market, but if you want to have something really nice, then this is where you'd buy it. Our trip is almost over. The last restaurant that we had to go to is called Ujung Pandang, a seafood restaurant as well, also in South Jakarta. And Ujung Pandang is actually named after a city in South Sulawesi, one of Indonesia's many islands. The seafood here is cooked in that unique Ujung Pandang style with a lot of lemongrass, galangal, turmeric, tamarind, and shrimp paste, accompanied by this special sambal, this chili sauce with mango bits. Now, before we end this video, I want to give you a quick glimpse into the night market of Kebayoran Lama. Unfortunately, I didn't get the best footage here, but it will give you an idea of what it looks like. The market here opens at night and it goes until dawn, and a lot of restaurant owners actually shop here. So guys, this is definitely not all of Jakarta, it's just one thin layer of Jakarta. And guys, it goes without saying that this video, of course, does not reflect the lives of most people in Indonesia. But hopefully it gave you a bit of an idea of what Jakarta looks like. Now let me know in the comments below what your first impression of Jakarta is after watching this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you pretty soon in the next video.